Also, sir.
Okay, sorry for the delay. Okay, so your class is on hydrated liver cyst. I think Sunil sir has already taken on liver abscess. So your class for Friday liver abscess has already been done. So today we'll deal with hydrated cyst of the liver. Okay, hydrated cyst is caused mostly by Echinococcus granulosus, where humans are an accidental host. They are intermediate in that, and they are an accidental host. That is, if we consume the infected or contaminated Echinococcus granulosus, infected meat products or vegetable products, then these worms infest in humans. Most of them infest in the liver, they can also infest in the lungs, and they can be distributed according to the arterial system in the subcutaneous tissue, beneath the skin, and in other areas. But the most common is in the liver. And it's most common where sheep and other poultry are in high groups, that is in the Mediterranean, South America, Middle East, Australia, and New Zealand, but also in the Southeast Asia, being India, Nepal, Bangladesh as well. So this is the morphology. If you see, you don't need it in details. I think you have dealt with the details of this in your pathology classes as well, right? So mostly, as I said before, the humans are an accidental intermediate host. These eggs are excreted in the feces, and this feces contaminated vegetables, or if they're ingested by other animals, then only it goes into humans. The definitive host is a dog, and the most common intermediate host is sheep. Okay, so the definite host eat the viscera, and the cycle is completed. So this is how the cycle is mostly done, and feces contaminated eggs, if they are ingested by humans, they can be ingested and spread anywhere. As you can see in the picture of the humans, it can also go inside the brain, causing seizures, in the lungs, in the liver, in the kidneys, in the intestines, and other places. But the most common, as the biggest circle is seen, it's in the liver. So humans are the intermediate accidental hosts, which are ingested by contaminated foods or fingers through the dogs, sheep, or other animals, and they pass through the small intestine and through the blood vessel and lymphatics. It can go 10% into the lungs, mostly into the liver, sometimes into the kidneys, into the abdomen, in subcutaneous tissues, and sometimes even 2% in the bones. And among the liver, because of your portal system, the most common site of the liver is the right side. And they may be single or multiple. They, through the intestine, as it goes into the blood vessels, it can also be found in your peritoneal spaces as well. They most commonly present after the hydrated cyst is large in size, depending upon the site. As the liver is the largest internal organ, the size should be very big for the patient to be symptomatic. And most of them are single lobe, single lesions, and 80%, as I said before, in the right lobe, most commonly in the right lobe of the liver. The hydrated cyst has 3 layers: the outer pericyst, the middle laminated membrane, and the inner germinal cell. And inside the cyst, as you can see, there will be many small daughter cysts. And we'll discuss it later. When this cyst size becomes very big, sometimes it may rupture due to pressure, and these daughter cysts are spread out inside the areas where other hydatid cysts may be formed. Okay, this may come as an MCQ as well. How many layers does a hydatid cyst have, and what are the layers, depending upon it. The outer layer, as I said, is the pericyst. Okay. If it is inside the liver, sometimes as the cyst grows, it may infiltrate or stretch the bile ducts, blood vessels. And if it's in the liver and if it involves the bile ducts, sometimes the patients may come with jaundice as well due to the pressure on the intrahepatic ducts. The second layer is an amylated membrane, and these are a metabolic interface which gives support to the cyst. The inner layer or the intercyst is the germinal membrane, production for which produces the hydrated fluid and daughter cysts. And this is how the broad capsule formation is there. These details must have been taken up in your basics in pathology as well, or maybe in medicine as well. So we'll not go into detail. These cysts consist of sand, hydrated sand as well, which are dissolved scoliosis inside the fluid. This is how it looks under a microscope. And in the adults, in the definitive hosts, form adult tapeworms. In the intermediate or in humans, they do not form into adult tapeworms but into multiple hydrated cysts. This is how it looks. These are your daughter cysts, small ball-like things. This is the huge hydrated cyst, and these small things are your white ones are your daughter cysts, while the black ones are your calcified cysts. And if these rupture, if the whole hydrated cyst ruptures inside the abdomen, then these daughter cysts are released and they later mature into their own hydrated cysts as well. So the goal of surgery being, you have to take out the whole hydrated cyst and not the individual ones only. So patients may present with a lump in your upper abdomen. This is a huge, probably a diagram of a huge cyst. And most of them are uncomplicated, maybe asymptomatic. And sometimes if the cyst ruptures, they may present with toxic reactions due to the parasite itself. Or as I said, they may give pressure on the intrahepatic ducts, leading to local mechanical effects. And the clinical feature depends on the site and size. If it's in the brain, it may present with stroke, seizures, and also depending upon the size. So patients may have pain or discomfort in your right upper quadrant or epigastric. Sometimes a huge hepatomegaly as seen in this diagram. And non-specific features obviously of fatigue, nausea, discomfort, fever. And in the blood, they may be suspected if the patient has a large amount of eosinophils present in the blood or eosinophilia. And this, as I said, jaundice and hyperbilirubinemia is rare. That is, if there is any pressure, mechanical local pressure applied on the intrahepatic ducts or on the extrahepatic ducts sometimes. So 75% are asymptomatic. They may come with abdominal pain, dyspepsia, fever, chills, or jaundice. If it's very huge, then you might find a right upper quadrant mass or swelling. Sometimes there may be tenderness. And in the blood picture, it's mostly suspected if the patient has eosinophilia. Blood count is mostly within normal range unless the hydrated cyst has a superadded infection in it. Yes, right? You're hearing me, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So as I said, in the skin also it can be formed. Obviously, it'll be much smaller in size. This is due to your lymphatic and your blood vessels. And no single test is diagnostic for it. A Cassonese is still used over here. If a Cassoni is positive, if the ultrasound of this area is suggestive, and if the patient has eosinophilia, then it's diagnosed as this is subcutaneous hydrated deposits. ELISA is diagnostic over here. And obviously in ELISA we see the IgE antibodies which will be present if the daughter cysts are active, not if they are died. I don't think the ARC5 antibody test is commonly done in Nepal. It depends on the places. But we mostly depend upon ELISA, eosinophilia, and your ultrasound or your CT findings. If it's a huge hydrated cyst, sometimes it may push the diaphragm up. This can also be seen in any other pathology of the liver, not only your hydrated cyst. Even in a liver abscess, the diaphragm may be pushed up. In any liver carcinomas, it may be pushed up. But in liver abscess and in liver cysts, it'll mostly be smooth. You can differentiate liver cysts from liver abscess. In the liver abscess, obviously, as Sir has told, liver abscess are also parasitic and amoebic. They may have fever, and obviously on aspiration and all that, it's anchovy sauce type of thing. That is dark black or maroon type of fluid. Right? But how to differentiate a liver cyst from a hepatic abscess is? Hepatic abscesses mostly will have fever. The counts will be raised, but in liver cysts, the counts are mostly normal. They may be asymptomatic or mostly will not have fever. They will be afebrile. This is how it looks in an ultrasound. There are various gradings for an ultrasound. There are 4 gradings, but in your MBBS level, I don't think you need the grading of an ultrasound. And you can see the calcified walls. This is the huge cyst. This is the calcified wall inside. And you can see the internal structures and location of the cyst as well. There is a grading system, but I don't think it's required in MBBS level. That's why I have not gone into that. So as I said, some might have taught you a pyogenic cyst. There's a pyogenic abscess, an amoebic abscess, there's a hydrated, there's a congenital cyst, and obviously there's cystadenoma. The age group obviously differs. Cystadenoma and congenital mostly will come in a younger age. Hydrated, amoebic, and pyogenic may be formed in adults. And this is the difference. Pyogenic will mostly have pus, amoebic will have anchovy paste. Hydrated will be clear watery type of, or bilous if it's communicating with your bile tracts, or gelatinous. Agatha. This is how it looks, a huge hydrated cyst in your right lobe in your CT scan. They give you the direct location if there's any communication with your bile ducts, hepatic ducts. And a CT these days is imperative or necessary before you go for an operative management. This is how it looks in a MRI. This is how it looks in a CT. You can see two cysts in your right and left lobe, huge one in your right lobe near your calyx. So depending upon where the cyst is, what the size is, the treatment varies. This is another MRI showing the cyst over here. MRI is not mostly done. This is, sorry, an ERCP. It shows the cyst over here. MRI and ERCP are not mostly done. ERCP is done only if the CT suggests that it's near the hepatic ducts and you want to rule out a bile duct, you want to see the bile duct anatomy in detail. So anaphylaxis can occur if the cyst ruptures, be it inside the liver, inside the lungs, in your peritoneal cavity. They may cause infections, cholangitis, and the treatment is medical, surgical, and in surgical also its various types, being percutaneous or laparoscopic or open surgery. If the cysts are small in size, located deep in the liver, less than 4 centimeters, if the patient has no complications, then it's managed conservatively with medical treatment. Okay, the medical treatment is we give albendazole or mebendazole. And mostly albendazole for long. Not Katakiti pair, but percutaneous aspiration and drainage. This is done if the cysts are mostly more than 4 centimeters, but less than 10 centimeters. But you should have a good radiologist as well. And if pair fails, obviously the treatment is surgery. That is, you aspirate the cyst, you inject a solicidal agent, and again re-aspirate it. This is mostly done if the cysts are non-calcified. You can't do it in calcified cysts, it will be useless. And the solicidal agent is a combination of saline and ethanol. Ultrasounded guided puncture of the cyst, and then you aspirate it, inject this solicidal agent, and re-aspirate it. And obviously, you have to have a coverage of albendazole, and after 3 weeks, do a repeat scan and see how the cyst is. This is if the cysts are 4 to 8 centimeters, but obviously less than 10 centimeters, and if it is uncomplicated cysts. Okay. And also obviously where those patients are not fit for surgery, may be pregnant as well. But it's not done if the cysts are in communication with your biliary tract. Or as I said, you need a good radiologist. If they cannot access the cyst, then obviously it's useless. And obviously little children will not be able to undergo care. It's done under local anesthesia. Okay. As there's some rates of recurrence and some complications, the patient should be admitted and followed up for 1 or 2 days post the procedure. Sometimes anaphylactic shock may occur, and obviously minor anaphylaxis such as fever, hypotension, itching, urticaria may occur, and the cyst may rupture, so OT should be on standby. And surgery is the treatment of choice for uncomplicated huge hydrated cysts or big cysts. So these are your goals or objectives of surgery. Right? As even after surgery, there is a chance of recurrence. After surgery, also the patient should be on albendazole for at least 3 weeks and a repeat scan in around month to 2 months, and then to see the picture. And again, it may be required the medical treatment. The various medical modes are open evacuation, which was mostly commonly done maybe around 8 to 10 years back. Then nowadays we can also do laparoscopic evacuation. The thing is, we can also do a pericystectomy, that is removal of the whole covering. And if there are multiple cysts or the liver has become damaged, then you may also require a liver resection or a transplantation. I've also written anastomosis over here. That is in your CT, MRI, if you see a communication between the bile ducts or your hepatic ducts with your cyst, then sometimes a hepatojejunostomy or cystojejunostomy, that is communication of the new communication or drainage communication for the hepatic ducts should be made with your bowel. But this is rare, but this may occur, may have to be done in some cases. A laparoscopic cyst evacuation is done mostly if I don't know if you have been taught the segments of the liver, but if the cyst is in your posterior segments or in the posterior part of the liver, where laparoscopical instruments cannot be introduced, then open segment 7 or 8, that is posteriorly, where your surgical laparoscopic instruments cannot approach that area. Or sometimes if it's a deep-seated liver cyst, sometimes in those conditions also a laparoscopy cannot be done. You have to do it open. Most common is if it's in the posterior, segment 7, segment 8. If your laparoscopic instruments cannot approach that area, those are contraindications. And also if there is a biliary or a hepatic duct infiltration of the cyst, in those conditions you cannot do it laparoscopically. In those conditions, an open cyst evacuation should be done. So this is diagrams of an open cyst. Aspiration to see if there's any biliary communication sometimes, which cannot be detected in an MRI or CT. If it's a cyst only, then this fluid will be clear. If it's bile or hepatic ducts are involved, then this fluid will be bilous. Then you open up the tract take out the cyst tissue along with your daughter cysts. Then you take out the covering of your hydatid cyst and you put omentum inside it and close it up so that the new cyst cannot form and the space collapses. This is another diagram where the whole cyst is taken off, we close it up and put a drain. Why diagram देखियो? देखा सही? This is known as a omentoplasty. This is known as an omentoplasty, where the omentum is fixed inside the collapsed space in your liver. Because this space will not give away. This space can again be filled with serous fluids, other fluids, which may again get infected. So an omentum is packed inside this area, and a drain is also kept.
So, pack got delivered with the
So the complications are rare. It's seen in 1/3 of the patients. Most commonly, if the cyst ruptures, while doing the surgery as well, sometimes if there's spillage of your hydatid cyst components, then and there also anaphylaxis can occur, which may lead up to death. So anaphylaxis and conscience should be taken that the patient may also die, which is rare but may occur. And if it's this huge space of occupying lesions, depending upon the site mostly, obviously in your brain, the site, even if the size is small, it may lead to symptoms, even if the size is small. But in your liver, because the site is big, even after the size is very big, the patients may still be asymptomatic. This, obviously, the symptoms depend upon your pressure that the size of the cyst may cause. Also depending upon your communication, if it's in the lungs with a bronchial tree, if it's in the liver with a biliary system. Medical therapy, as I said, depending upon the size, only if it's less than 4 centimeters, because there's a chance of recurrence. So they have to be followed up at least to 3 to 6 months to see what's the size of the cyst. If it's more than 4 centimeters up to 8 centimeters, you can do a drainage procedure or pair. Or in those patients which are not a surgical candidate. But if it's a huge one and if it's more than 10 centimeters or the patient is symptomatic, then obviously you need surgery. And depending upon the site in the liver, can it be done open or can laparoscopic also be done? As I said before, laparoscopic depends upon the access. If it's a accessible area, if it's in the front of your liver, if it's on the outside of your liver, if it's not deep, if it's not posterior, not in segment 7 or 8, those are contraindications for laparoscopy. Obviously, this is just a review of what I've said before. If after you take out your liver cysts, if few daughter cysts are left in your peritoneum, they may again grow and form separate hydatid cysts, which may form hydatid cysts in your peritoneal or abdominal cavity. And if these rupture, sometimes they may lead to septic shock or anaphylactic shock. Okay, thank you.